Good morning, class. As we mentioned yesterday, today we're going to be performing the speeches which you wrote all by yourself last night about something that was kind of important to you. I think we'll get started today with our first volunteer. Timmy, would you please come forward?
Sure thing, Mr. B. I've got this one. 5 minus 1 years ago, our dads brought forth upon this continent a newer nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the idea that almost all men will be created in equality. Now we are engaged in a great civil disagreement.
Okay, Timmy, I'm pretty sure you took the Gettysburg Address and you changed a few words around. We'll talk in a little bit about why that was not what you were supposed to do. But could we have our next volunteer, Tommy, maybe?
Sure thing, Mr. B. I got this. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream. I have a dream that one day in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
Okay, Tommy, that was definitely Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Class, I think we need to have a quick talk about plagiarism.
You see, Tommy and Timmy fell into the trap of trying to copy someone else's work and pass it off as their own. Tommy just copied the text word for word, and Timmy attempted to change some of the words, but he kept the same ideas. Both of these examples are forms of plagiarism. Now, most people don't try to pass off the Gettysburg Address as their own idea, but the idea of taking someone else's work and saying that it's yours is ultimately the same. Most students realize it would be wrong to try to pass off such a famous speech as their own written work, because it is so recognizable. What's the difference when the work is less famous? Do we just think we won't get caught? The rest of this video will show you how to cite ideas and words that aren't yours in essays, so that we can avoid similar mistakes of plagiarism in the future.
Okay, so when considering whether or not we're plagiarizing, we need to make sure we ask ourselves one main question. Is what I am typing in my, let's capitalize that, underline it, bold it, everything there, in my own words? If the answer is yes, then all you're going to need is a citation at the end of the sentence. So let's go ahead and take a look at some information I could be doing in recent times. So in this case, yesterday, Harriet Tubman was announced that she will be on the $20 bill that will be coming out instead of Andrew Jackson. So as I'm reading through this article, we see Treasury Secretary Jacob J. Lew on Wednesday announced the most sweeping and historically symbolic makeover of American currency in a century, proposing to replace the slaveholding Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill with Harriet Tubman, the former slave and abolitionist, and to add women and civil rights leaders to the $5 and $10 notes. So that's a lot of information, and if I wanted to put that into my own words, I could generalize it a little bit. I could say, for example, let's get rid of this underline for a second. In a noteworthy change in U.S. currency, if I can spell that right, Harriet Tubman, along with other notable women and activists, has been added to the $20 bill instead of Andrew Jackson. Now, if I were to take that sentence and if I were to Google it, that is all of my words. That's not going to show up on any other website. However, if I liked the way that they said it, and if I thought there was absolutely no way I could say it better at all, I can take their wording word for word. And most commonly we do this by highlighting Hit Control C for copy, Control V for paste. Okay. Now we notice a couple things when we do it this way. Number one, the font is bigger. This is Georgia size 13. When I click on the top part here, it's Arial size 10.5. So we want to make sure, even if we're copying things, that we keep everything as uniform as we possibly can. So we're going to change this so that we match our general font size. Secondly, while it's kind of hard to see, it does appear that they have a highlight color on this particular. So we want to make sure that we change that so there's no highlight whatsoever. Now we have Arial size 10. Let's get that to 10.5. 10.5. It's not going to change for us. That's okay. We can change the overall font size to 12 or something like that later. Now, I cannot just put this in the middle of a paragraph. These are not my words. This is somebody else's words. And if we look back, we know exactly who it is because the New York Times has authors for their articles. In this case, we see Jackie Kelms. So we want to make note that this was said by Jackie Kelms. Now, since it's not our words, we need to make sure that we're giving credits to Jackie Kelms in our papers and in our speeches and all the rest of the stuff. We do this by putting those words that are not ours in quotation marks. Then, since we want to show who this quote is coming from, we usually just use the last name. So it would be Kelms, just like this. Now, the reason we do this is because at the end of an essay, we'll have what we call a bibliography. The bibliography is a list of sources that we use throughout the course of our essay. I like to use some of the online generators because it's a little bit easier, and as long as you know what you're doing, it'll work pretty well. So in this case, if we go to Easybib, all you have to do is copy the URL and put it in there. So I'm going to go over here, Control C, and I'm going to Control V, put that in there and click Cite It. This is going to put it in an MLA format, which is most common for English. Easybib's gathering all of the information. Now, in this case, since this is a pretty common news media site, they were able to actually find the website title, article title, publisher, author, all that stuff. If, after I click continue to the final step, if any of these fields are blank and I needed to fill, if any of these are blank, I need to make sure I fill in those particular fields. But in this case, Easybib did a great job for me. I click Create Citation, and now we have our entry for our bibliography. Again, copy, paste, and we have our citation. Now, the reason we use the author's last name way back up there in the text is because if something sounds wrong, or if we want to just make sure we know where this information is coming from, all I have to do is go and see, oh, it's from Kelms. I go down to the bottom in the bibliography, and it's hanging out right there. So I'll be able to see exactly what website it came from. A couple other notes quick. Notice that these are still hyperlinked. We want to make sure that we get rid of those hyperlinks. You can do that just by clicking Remove, because we do not need blue underlines and hyperlinks within an essay. So that's the general gist of when you need to copy and paste something, how you are able to do so. Just make sure it's in quotation marks and you cite the author's last name. In this case, back up here, I wanted to make one last note. Since this information is not my own, I can't claim that I just knew this off the top of my head. This is not something where I woke up this morning and I was like, wow, Harriet Tubman got added. I had to look this up somewhere. And again, it's the same person. I got to give credit to who was able to give me that information. So in this case, we're going to put Kelms here as well. So even if you write it in your own words, the information still needs to be cited from where you got that information.
Okay, so hopefully now you understand a little bit more about plagiarism, but the most important thing I want to make sure that we know is this. If you ever have any questions about whether something is plagiarized or not, whether you need to rephrase it in your own words, or put a citation, any of that kind of thing, please come talk to your teacher, come talk to me, and we'll be happy to help.